Hello again. It's time to read another chapter of Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. If you remember where we left off, it's page 129, chapter 17, Rescue in Minusland. Once you're ready, we'll start right up. I don't like it here at all, Charlie whispered. It gives me the willies. Me too, Mr. Wonka whispered back, but we've got a job to do, Charlie, and we must go through with it. The mist was condensing now on the glass walls of the elevator, making it difficult to see out except through the open doors. Do any other creatures live here, Mr. Wonka? Plenty of newlies. Are they dangerous? If they bite you, they are. You're a goner, my boy, if you're bitten by a newlie. The elevator drifted on, rocking gently from side to side. The gray-black oily fog swirled around them. What does a newlie look like, Mr. Wonka? They don't look like anything, Charlie. They can't. You mean you've never seen one? You can't see newlies, my boy. You can't even feel them until they puncture your skin. Then you're too late. Then they've got you. You mean there might be swarms of them all around us this very moment? There might, said Mr. Wonka. Charlie felt his skin beginning to creep. Do you die all at once? He asked. First you become subtracted. A little later you are divided, but very slowly. It takes a long time. It's long division, and it's very painful. After that, you become one of them. Couldn't we shut the door? Charlie asked. I'm afraid not, my boy. We'd never see her through the glass. There's too much mist and moisture. She's not going to be easy to pick out anyway. Charlie stood at the open door of the elevator and stared into the swirling vapors. This, he thought, is what hell must be like. Hell without heat. There was something unholy about it, something unbelievably diabolical. It was all so deathly quiet, so desolate and empty, and at the same time, the constant movement, the twisting and swirling of the misty vapors gave one the feeling of that some very powerful force, evil and malignant, was at work all around. Charlie felt a jab on his arm. He jumped. He almost jumped out of the elevator. Sorry, said Mr. Wonka. It's only me. Oh, Charlie gasped. For a second I thought, I know what you thought, Charlie. And by the way, I'm awful glad you're with me. How would you like to come down here alone as I did, as I had to do so many times? I wouldn't, said Charlie. There she is, said Mr. Wonka, pointing. Nope, she isn't. Oh dear, I could have sworn I saw her for a moment right there over on the edge of the dark patch. Keep watching, Charlie. There, said Charlie. Over there, look. Where, said Mr. Wonka. Point to her, Charlie. She's gone again. She sort of faded away. They stood at the open door of the elevator, peering into the swirly gray vapors. There, quick, right there, Charlie cried. Can't you see her? Yes, Charlie, I see her. I'm moving up close now. Mr. Wonka reached behind him and began touching a number of buttons. Grandma, he cried out. We've come to get you, Grandma. They could see her faintly through the mist. Oh, so faintly. And they could see the mist through her as well. She was transparent. She was hardly there at all. She was no more than a shadow. They could see her face and just the faintest outline of her body swathed in a nightgown. But she wasn't upright. She was floating lengthwise in the swirling vapor. Why is she lying down? Charlie whispered. Because she's a minus, Charlie. Surely you know what a minus sign looks like. Like that. Mr. Wonka drew a horizontal line in the air with his finger. The elevator glided close. The ghostly shadow of Grandma Georgina's face was no more than a yard away now. Charlie reached through the door to touch her, but there was nothing there to touch. His hand went through her skin. Grandma, he gasped. She began to drift away. Stand back, ordered Mr. Wonka, and suddenly from a secret place inside his coattails, he whisked out a spray gun. It was one of those old-fashioned things people used for spraying fly spray around the room before aerosol cans came along. He aimed the spray gun straight at the shadow of Grandma Georgina, and he pumped the handle hard once, twice, 3 times. Each time, a fine black spray spurted out of the nozzle of the gun. Instantly, Grandma Georgina disappeared. A bullseye! Cried Mr. Wonka, jumping up and down with excitement. I got her with both barrels. I plussed her good and proper. That's Vita-Wonk for you. Where's she gone? Charlie asked. Back to where she came from, of course. To the factory. She's a minus no longer, my boy. She's 100% red-blooded plus. Come along now. Let's get out of here quickly before the newlies find us. Mr. Wonka jabbed a button. The doors closed and the great glass elevator shot upward for home. Sit down and strap yourself in, Charlie, said Mr. Wonka. We're going flat out this time. The elevator roared and rocketed up toward the surface of the earth. Mr. Wonka and Charlie sat side by side on their little jump seats strapped in tight. Mr. Wonka started tucking the spray gun back into that enormous pocket somewhere in his coattails. "It's such a pity one has to use a clumsy old thing like this," he said, "but there's simply no other way of doing it. Ideally, of course, one would measure out exactly the right number of drops into a teaspoon and feed it carefully into her mouth. But it's impossible to feed anything to a Minus. It's like trying to feed one's own shadow. That's why I've got to use the spray gun. Spray 'em all over, my boy. That's the only way." "It worked fine, though, didn't it?" Charlie said. "Oh, it worked all right," said Charlie. "It worked beautifully, and I'm saying there's bound to be a slight overdose." "I don't know quite what you mean," said Mr. Wonka. "My dear boy, it only takes 4 drops of Vitawonk to turn a young Oompa Loompa into an old man." And Mr. Wonka lifted his hands and let them fall limply to his lap. "You mean Grandma may have gotten too much?" asked Charlie, turning pale. "I'm afraid that's putting it rather mildly," said Mr. Wonka. "Why did you give her such a lot of it, then?" Charlie said, getting more and more worried. "Why did you spray her 3 times? She must have gotten pints and pints of it." "Gallons!" cried Mr. Wonka, slapping his thighs. "Gallons and gallons. But don't let a little thing like that bother you, my dear Charlie. The important part of it is we've got her back. She's a Minus no longer. She's a lovely plus. She's as plussy can be. She's more plussy than you or than me. The question is how old is she now? Is she more than 103? This is a bit of a short chapter, but don't worry, we'll be going on to the next chapter soon enough. I'll see you tomorrow when we do chapter 18, The Oldest Person in the World, on page 135. Until then, you rest up, and I'll see you in the morning. Or I'll see you tomorrow night, I guess. Good night.